Tonight, shockwaves from Donald Trump's tariff wars send the U.S. economy into reverse. From steady growth to a slump, but the U.S. president blames his predecessor and promises better days ahead.
We're turning it around. It's a big ship to turn around, and we're going to have the greatest country financially in the history of the world.
After his celebratory rally overnight and a cabinet meeting this afternoon, he'll address the state of the economy. We'll bring you his comments live. But with the full effect of his trade policy still unclear, could things get even worse? We'll discuss that tonight. Plus, returning to ruins, Yusra El-Bagir visits her family home in Sudan for the first time in 2 years.
War isn't pretty, but there is something salvageable, and that's enough. And there are many people, thousands of people, who won't get to rebuild, who didn't survive this war.
A senior Pakistani politician tells me his country's army is on standby as intelligence suggests military action by India within days. And 50 years on from the fall of Saigon, Vietnam marks the end of its war. It's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. It's day 101 of Donald Trump's presidency, and it brought economic data the White House, frankly, will find hard to spin. That's because after 3 years of solid growth, the U.S. economy shrank for the first time in the first 3 months of 2025. No cause for celebration, you might think, but the president is sticking to his no pain, no gain mantra. He believes this short-term turmoil is needed to bolster American manufacturing.
We're here tonight in the heartland of our nation to celebrate the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country, and that's according to many, many people.
Well, that was last night in Michigan. Today, he blamed the slump on what he called the Biden overhang. Tariffs, he said, had nothing to do with it, but the data does point to a big jump in imports as companies stockpiled ahead of price increases. And that's part of the reason for this graph. Just have a look. A 0.3% contraction compared to 2.4% growth at the end of Joe Biden's presidency. And even more concerning for businesses, this figure, 32%. That's how much consumer confidence has fallen. Americans are frankly spooked and worried about spending because they don't know what will happen next.
That's Biden. That's not Trump, because we came in on January, this is quarterly numbers, and we came in and I was very against everything that Biden was doing in terms of the economy, destroying our country in so many ways.
But blaming Biden is not going to cut it. Here's another percentage for you. 55% of American adults disapprove of the way Donald Trump is doing his job. That's according to a recent poll from our partners at NBC News. So even as he's pleading for patience and the White House is promising a new golden age, that doesn't seem to be enough to convince voters. Donald Trump will defend his economic record at the White House any minute now. We'll bring you that live in a moment. Now, first, let's go straight to our David Blevins, who joins me from Washington. And David, you look at some of those figures and you look at the fact that he's pointed the finger of blame on Joe Biden. But frankly, before Donald Trump was elected, I remember the front page of The Economist. It was described as the envy of the world. And now we're seeing this reversal.
Yes, and it could get even worse, according to most economists. Yalda, the White House seems to be placing all of its hope in the possibility of trade deals, but to date, they haven't signed a single one. In fact, there is continuing debate about the level of engagement between the world's two largest economies, America and China. President Trump says they are engaged with President Xi Jinping, but the Chinese say there is no conversation happening. And all of that failure so far to produce a trade deal with any country in the world is what's fueling the Democrats' talk about a recession, or a Trump session, as they are describing it. The president is continuing to blame Joe Biden. He says this is Biden's market, but there is a problem for him in that. Last November, just before the election, when the economy was in much better shape, he talked about Trump's market. So there's really only so long you can get away with blaming the previous administration. But what will he do if there is a recession? He's already told us. Today, he said, if the next quarter also sees a shrinking in the US economy, it will still be Joe Biden's problem.
Extraordinary. I mean, the fact that he's, digging his heels in, and the polls, we just sort of went through some of those numbers. I mean, Americans are concerned, and the polling numbers show that.
Yeah, he is polling lower than any of his predecessors at this point in his presidency, but he is buckled in and he is determined to stick to this road in terms of tariffs, and he is determined to deflect from any criticism as well. Today, at a cabinet meeting in the White House on day 101, he, for example, talked about them having attracted a record $8 trillion in investment. And I have to say, cabinet meetings have become a very unusual spectacle, Yalda, where we see secretaries seated around the table today, each with a hat placed in front of them with the words Gulf of America on it. And they're very lengthy. Today's meeting was 2.5 hours long. But the only business that took place was the business of them all telling Donald Trump how good a job he's doing and then seeking his approval for their various portfolios. So I think this evening we're going to hear him talk again about investment, but we're going to hear from someone else this evening we've not heard from in a while, a woman called Kamala Harris. She's going to make her most extensive comments since she left the office of Vice President, having lost the election to Donald Trump. And you can bet your bottom dollar she's going to talk about the economy, because a shrinking economy is a gift, albeit a very unwelcome one, for the Democrats at a time when they're struggling to find a strategy to unify around in terms of how they're going to counter Donald Trump in this presidency.
Yeah, absolutely, David. And as you say, we are expecting Donald Trump to speak any minute now. So as soon as that happens, we will be bringing that live to our audiences. And this issue is something that we have discussed on my podcast, The World with Richard Engel, my co-host this week. So you can tune in to that as well. David, thank you so much for now. Now, we are waiting for Donald Trump, as I said, but let's go to the rest of the day's news now. And it's hard to believe that it's been 2 years since violence flared in Sudan and thousands of people scrambled to leave the country. The war is being fought between the army, led by a senior general, and the paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces Command, by the general's former deputy. Once allies, they are now rivals, and that rivalry has had a devastating effect. Well, while difficult to estimate, the United Nations believes that more than 150,000 people have been killed in the conflict and an estimated 12 million people left displaced. It's believed to be the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Begir returned to her family home in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, and sent us this report.
2 years of war and waiting to return to the city where I was born and the home I grew up in.
This is the first time we're going into Khartoum since the war started. And we take this road straight from the bridge all the way down to where my house is.
2 years of clinging to hope. But war is the enemy of hope. It crushes and gnarls, leaving behind the signs of hell.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. And it's not a celebration. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It feels like this was so unnecessary, so preventable. And now we're just going back to the ruins.
Millions have been displaced by this war, tens of thousands killed and maimed by its violence. The city at the heart of Sudan is now empty. Even the lampposts have been stripped of wires and left to the weeds. My parents fled at the start of the war, convinced it would only last a few weeks. Their overgrown garden tells a much longer story, surrounded by the deserted homes of our displaced neighbors.
Okay, tamam.
We get the all clear to go in. There are no signs of unexploded munitions, but a bomb may have gone off nearby.
It's just so much grief. And at the same time, I know it could have been much worse. They could have been here when these guys came in.
The loss is confirmed. Our home of 25 years, once full of family and friends, and many of our memories, has been ransacked. Now a wasteland of all we cherish.
So this is where the family would sit. We'd wake up every morning and we'd come out and have some tea here.
Our house, like so many others, was occupied by the RSF, who captured Khartoum and claimed the homes in it, leading a mass looting campaign that will take generations to recover from.
They've wiped what looks like feces on the wall and then punctured a hole through this painting of my late grandmother and then just completely trashed my dad's office. And they did it because they could.
And then my bedroom, torn through and stripped of material value, with what I value discarded.
That's my university certificate. It's just another piece of rubbish, I guess.
This is one of the albums.
Yeah, it's a good album. Baba Khalid.
I call my mother to put her at ease,
Look at this old one of you as well.
but the grief erupts.
I never thought that I'll see my house like that. This is my house for the end of my life. I was supposed to die here in this house. I was supposed to be buried here in my country. I was supposed to enjoy my garden and my place. I was supposed to cook and cater for you and your children. I was supposed to be here for the rest of my life. Alhamdulillah, thank God for everything.
Now that the initial shock has subsided, I do feel a sense of closure. I feel a sense of acceptance. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty. But there is something salvageable, and that's enough. And there are many people, thousands of people, who won't get to rebuild, who didn't survive this war.
It's hard to see the life once lived here, under the dirt and desecration. But what they left in their hurry to steal is of the highest worth. The love shared in our home and our country. Light that's been dimmed by the darkness of war, but can never be truly put out.
And Yusra joins me now. Yusra, this has been such an extraordinarily moving journey for you. You've been covering this conflict right from the very beginning for the last 2 years, every twist and turn and devastation. And of course, you and your family have also been at the centre of this story. You felt it in the same way as so many other Sudanese people who, frankly, as you said in your piece, haven't been as lucky as you to be able to go back even to the ruins of their homes. I just want to capture that and how that's been for you. I know that you don't want to make this about you, and it's a wider picture about the Sudanese people, but I do want to hear a little bit more about just having that experience.
We've spoken to people over the last 2 years who've shared the most devastating stories, who've lost loved ones, who've had their children burnt alive in front of them. It only felt right to share what my family had been through. It only felt right to share the fact that this war has spared very few, if any, people at all. That is the scale that we're dealing with. We're not just talking about one house here or there or a frontline zone. We're talking about an entire capital city home to millions of people. That is why people share. That is why the people who have been in the throes of their devastation, of their tragedy, have stopped and taken a moment to tell us
what it feels like. This war has gone on ignored. It has been completely relegated to the sidelines of global politics. That is a huge, grave error. The millions of people whose lives will never be restored will remember this. And history will remember this too. And so archiving these moments, talking to people, seeing what it means for people has been not only important, but also a huge learning experience for us as a team. We've seen the worst of humanity and the best of humanity over the last 2 years. And kind of in the devastation of my home, the things that matter came into focus. It wasn't about the physical photos in the devastation in the wreckage. It was about the people that I had shared those moments with. It was about the memories that we made. It was about the rooms that had people laughing and drinking tea and eating. That's what we're holding on to here. That's what matters. And that is also what has gotten people through. The community kitchens, the mutual aid, the fundraising campaigns, the fundraising events abroad, the people who have stood by their families here every single day. That is why we have managed to survive despite the world turning away. And that is why the goodwill amongst the people is what will get us through when foreign aid is frozen by Trump, when global mediation efforts, international mediation fails. I think that is the enduring lesson here.
Yeah, Yusra, I can hear the devastation in your voice, because it has been devastating for the Sudanese people and for those who have watched through your reporting what's been going on inside the country. I want to pick up on what you said there about the determination, the perseverance of the Sudanese people, the best of humanity as well. I remember at the beginning of this conflict, when foreign nationals were still in the country and people were being evacuated, that's when the attention was on Sudan. But there were still so many people who, part of the emergency services, for example, doctors at the time we were speaking to, who were refusing to leave the country because they wanted to stay and help. And that is what has been also quite remarkable about this. Despite the devastation, despite the darkness that we've seen in Sudan, there's also been that level of humanity.
Absolutely. I think our community here reflects the Sudan that will never be crushed or killed or destroyed. And it's the community that has grown amidst the cycles of military coups, of conflict. It's the people that have stuck together. I mean, even just driving around neighborhoods in the northeast of the capital and seeing, people who are sat in front of their bullet-ridden homes, but they're sat together. And the people who've brought water out and are sharing it, and so many who've opened their homes. That's the Sudan that I come back to and that I work for. And I know that people around the world who are Sudanese are feeling the same. And that is why it's been so important to keep on this story, to stay on this story, and to show that the war is not over by any means. We've been seeing people who've been hit by drone strikes, who've lost most of their family members. There's still so much urgency here. People are in such a state of jeopardy. And again, without people sticking together and showing that kind of unified front, in the face of unspeakable horrors and atrocities, survival is completely out of the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yusra, thank you, as always, for all of your reporting. And you can watch more of Yusra's reports from Sudan from the last few years on our website. You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme. After the Kashmir terror attack, Pakistan claims to have intelligence that it will be attacked by India within days as tensions continue to flare between the two nuclear rivals.
On May the 1st, people across the country will head to the polls.
There's a lot at stake.
A seat in Parliament, 1,600 council seats and 6 mayoral elections, all up for grabs.
Who will win the tight race in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election?
Join us for Vote 2025. The results live as they come in, analysis and reaction.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right, i.e. fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Welcome back to the programme. You're just looking at some live shots there of the White House. We are expecting President Donald Trump to make a statement this evening discussing the state of the economy. We have seen some polls come out in the last day or so, marking 100 days since this administration came to power. And we also saw the news today about the US economy shrinking. And so Donald Trump has pointed the finger of blame at Joe Biden. And it says it's as a result of decisions made by his administration and not by the tariffs and the trade war, for example. So we're likely to hear a lot more around that from President Donald Trump when he does appear. Well, Pakistan claims to have credible intelligence that it will be attacked by India within days. Tensions have been growing between the two nuclear-powered rivals since a terror attack earlier this month within Indian-controlled Kashmir that left 26 people dead. Afterwards, a group called the Resistance Front claimed responsibility. But it was clear New Delhi felt Pakistan should shoulder some of the blame. Well, India announced a raft of measures, including the expulsion of almost all Pakistani nationals. These were pictures taken from the Attari border in India today. The deadline to get out actually passed on Sunday, but many people are still trying to leave. Fears of bigger escalation only grew when I spoke to Pakistan's Defence Minister on Thursday. It was an astonishing interview. In it, he made this threat if India were to launch an attack.
It would be a measured response. If there is an all-out, attack or something like that, then obviously there will be an all-out war.
That was Khwaja Asif speaking to me earlier in the week, a threat of all-out war. That alone made headlines, but Khwaja Asif sparked outcry within India because of another one of his comments. That came when I asked him whether Pakistan had funded terror groups in the past, just as India had accused them of. Have a listen.
Well, we have been doing this dirty work for the United States for about 3 decades, and West, including Britain.
So further statements there from the Pakistan Defence Minister, a public admission about doing dirty work on behalf of other nations enraged India. Yesterday, one of the country's UN officials called Pakistan a rogue state because of it. Have a listen.
The whole world has heard Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif admitting and confessing Pakistan's history of supporting, training and funding terrorist organizations in a recent television interview. This open confession surprises no one and exposes Pakistan as a rogue state.
That claim about doing dirty work for Western countries came up in yesterday's press briefing at the US State Department. Have a listen.
A Pakistani minister made a statement about performing dirty work for the United States while also denying the existence of Lashkar-e-Toiba in Pakistan. What is the State Department's response to that?
The only thing I'm really prepared to discuss here is the fact that the Secretary of State is going to be speaking with the foreign ministers of both countries.
That was the State Department spokesperson. They're essentially saying no comment. Well, this week, I've also been speaking to India's former ambassador to Afghanistan, Amar Sinha. We started with those reports of an impending attack on Pakistan and the question of how strongly Prime Minister Narendra Modi might retaliate.
It's not really a green light, but he has given them a free hand, basically to prepare the modality, the timing, the targets, all that he has done today. So I don't think it is as imminent as it appears in the media or in the social media, or even as Pakistani minister has been sort of claiming for the last 2 days. The fact that there will be a retaliation, I think it is very clear. That framework has been set both in 2016 and 2019, and Pakistan was well aware of it. Still, they did what they did.
Ambassador, you've been talking for years about Pakistan's intelligence and spy agencies supporting, funding, harbouring terror organisations. I put this to the Defence Minister, and it was quite, extraordinary, the admission that he made. It's something that people have talked about and accusations have been made against Pakistan. It's been like an open secret for decades, but it is also quite extraordinary now to see the defence establishment, the civilian government in Pakistan admitting that they actually do have these proxy groups that they support.
Yeah. You see, of course, this would need a much longer discussion, but in short, if I had to tell you that Pakistan does have a very strange relationship with terrorism. While on one hand, for 20 years, they were supposed to be a partner in anti-terror operation with the Americans, while at the same time they were harboring Taliban and other forces. Today, they are battling terror within their territory. Still, they do not hesitate in exporting it even today. So that seems to have become the USP of Pakistan. I think that Pakistan, unfortunately, the establishment, and I completely blame the military, that they have not learned lessons and they just keep repeating. And obviously, it will be a tough call for India because we understand the dilemma. Because while we know who the culprit is, we don't want to take actions which hurts Pakistani civilians. So I'm sure government will take a very considered view and take action which is very pinpointed and we target the people who are responsible.
I know you say that, the region and India shouldn't be afraid of this nuclear threat coming from Pakistan. But are you worried that an all-out war could break out between India and Pakistan and have wider implications?
Well, if you know a very famous statement by PM Modi, he himself has been telling, because we have two major conflicts going around in the world right now. His statement throughout has been that this is not an era of war. You can't solve problems through battles. Now, so obviously, given the position that he has taken, I don't feel that he will be the first to instigate it. But when push comes to shove, or when India feels that it's really got its back to the wall, I think there'll be retaliation. Now, I don't see it will be an all-out war. And if Pakistan says that people really need to look at its current state of the economy and at the status of the society, I don't think it is in a position to have a war for a long time and successfully. So for them, this sort of use of terror perhaps is a much more affordable policy at this current state.
That was Ambassador Amar Sinha speaking to me earlier. Well, after that interview, I spoke to Bilawal Bhutto, former Foreign Minister of Pakistan and chairman of the Pakistan People's Party. He caused controversy this week because of a statement he made in response to India suspending a crucial water-sharing treaty with Islamabad. Bhutto suggested either our water will flow or their blood. In a moment, you'll hear how he defended those remarks. But first, did he agree with Pakistan's defence minister that his country has been a backer of terrorism?
As far as what the defense minister said, I don't think that it's a secret that Pakistan has a past as far as extremist groups are concerned. And as a result of this, we have suffered. Pakistan has suffered. We've We've gone through wave after wave of extremism. We went through the Islamization and militarization of our society. But as a result of what we suffered, we also learned our lessons. We've gone through internal reforms in order to address this problem, not only for us, but also as a concern of the international community. As far as India's accusations are concerned, it would be helpful if India was to provide specific, concrete evidence with Pakistan and with the international community.
You were a victim of terrorism. Your mother was killed by a terrorist. She was assassinated, Benazir Bhutto. And there have been, over the years, tens of thousands of Pakistanis killed as a result of terrorist activity in the country. But when you say Pakistan has a past, it was the policy, maybe not of the civilian government, but certainly of the spy agency, the ISI, the military establishment, to fund and back these organizations. So can you then see why India continues to point the finger of blame on Pakistan? Because this has been a policy. I mean, we saw in 2021, the chief of the ISI was in Kabul. He was there just a few hours after the Taliban takeover, and it's been known for decades that Pakistan has had these policies.
So as far as Pakistan's history is concerned, it is history. It is not something that we partake in today. It is true that it is an unfortunate part of our history. We're not alone in this history. When, for example, in the first Afghan war, the Pakistani state and the Pakistani dictatorship at the time funded and supported and, in every way possible, the Mujahideen to take on the communists in Afghanistan. We did that in coordination and collaboration with Western powers. Post that incident, we went through the second conflict in Afghanistan, where obviously there was all of NATO's countries within Afghanistan, and Pakistan was a non-NATO ally. And we worked together with the United States and the international community to combat these terrorist groups. But it wasn't really until Pakistan went through the aggressive phase of terrorism that we did go through. We saw terrorist attack every other day that Pakistan internally, within our body politic, we got these sort of contradictions and these confusions related to this topic, particularly after the assassination of my mother, Shaheed Mohtarama Benazir Bhutto. You've seen Pakistan take serious action, successful action against these groups. I believe today this is not the case. The Pakistani government, the Pakistani agencies are not in league with, they're in fact combating such terrorist elements.
I just want to get to your comments about the water treaty, because you said either the water flows or their blood flows. A number of Indian ministers have come out and said, we will no longer tolerate this. Now they'll have to just wait a few days. Another minister said that this was, he had dishonored the sacrifice of his family. He's vowing decisive revenge for this attack. I mean, a number of Indian ministers have come back and taken issues with the comments that you've made.
I'm sure the Indian ministers have taken issues with the comments I made. Me and the people of Pakistan have certainly taken issue with the fact that India has unilaterally and illegally announced to exit from the Indus Water Treaty. Unfortunately, we're seeing now that there are new outrageous precedents, even in times of war. India and Pakistan have fought wars in the past, but we still didn't take such a step. It is something outrageous. It's an action that India has taken. I certainly not, my intent for my statement was certainly not advocating for bloodshed, but as the government of Pakistan had stated in their reaction to this decision, that it would be considered an act of war. And as you're well aware, when war happens, blood does flow. We do not want war. We seek peace. We've been seeking to engage with India for some time.
Do you believe that there is an imminent attack that India is going to launch on Pakistan?
Unfortunately, even though international law does not justify in any terms any such attack, you are well aware that under the United Nations, countries are only allowed to use force in cases of self-defense, not in cases of reprisal or to teach someone a lesson or in any of that case. We have seen in the past where they have launched attacks as a result. At the moment, the country is also bracing for any such action where Pakistan is at the ready to respond. But having said that, it is certainly not the path that will solve the issue of Kashmir. It is not the path that will solve the issue of terrorism, and it's not the path that will bring peace and stability to South Asia.
What would a Pakistani response look like? Because we saw something quite similar in 2019, where a series of airstrikes were launched on Pakistani soil by the Indians. An Indian Air Force pilot, his plane was shot out of the sky. He was captured. He was returned alive. But what kind of response is Pakistan likely to take if India does launch a series of airstrikes?
I don't want to go into theoreticals other than to say from our Air Force to our armed forces to our Navy, Pakistan is well capable of responding to any and all forms of Indian aggression.
And when you say that, I mean, do we know what that might look like?
Unfortunately, we've seen it in the past. Our two countries have gone to war before. It is our hope that this does not happen, that better sense prevails, that the international community is engaging with both sides, but forcefully engages with both sides to ensure that there's no escalation, that there's a fair and impartial and neutral investigation into the incident, and then create a conducive atmosphere where India and Pakistan could work together. Short of that, this could be turn into anything from a limited skirmish and a tit-for-tat between our air forces or any other wings of our armed forces, or it could turn into a full-scale war, and ultimately we're both nuclear-armed countries, and heaven forbid a nuclear conflict. That's always a concern whenever tensions increase between India and Pakistan.
That was Bilawal Bhutto, Pakistan's former foreign minister, speaking to me there. You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Lots more coming up on the programme. Israel appeals for international help to put out wildfires causing chaos in Jerusalem.
I'm Gillian Joseph. Coming up on Sky News at 10, a harrowing in-depth report on the aftermath of conflict in Sudan. New developments in the police shooting of Chris Kaba, and the King shares his experience of coping with cancer. Those stories and more at 10.
The Yazidis are a very small religious group, and in 2014, ISIS seemed to have set about their destruction.
Chilling reports describe ISIL militants rounding up families, conducting mass executions, and enslaving Yazidi women.
Some Yazidi survivors refused to be beaten by ISIS. But the suffering of the Yazidis is far from over. 10 years of darkness on Sky News.
secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back to the programme. You're just looking at some live pictures from the White House where President Donald Trump is about to host an Invest in America event. He's due to host that event, and it's about to begin any minute now. But we have spotted the CEOs of NVIDIA, Johnson & Johnson, GE Aerospace. They're all here at this crucial event. We also understand there will be defence, tech and healthcare industries present and invited at the event to really highlight current investments and attract more to the United States. This obviously comes off the back of President Trump defending his record in the last 100 days after we saw a new report which showed that the US economy has shrunk by 0.3% in the first 3 months of the year as firms stockpiled imports ahead of the Trump tariffs. Donald Trump has pointed the finger of blame at his predecessor, Joe Biden, saying it was the decisions of the Biden administration which led to the state of the economy. He said that the bad numbers on Wall Street have nothing to do with tariffs. So we are waiting for President Donald Trump. We did see some of his cabinet members there as well, including Defense Secretary Hegseth, who is there. And we will come back to this shortly, as soon as it begins, but we are expecting Donald Trump to arrive any minute now. I just want to bring you some images from just outside Jerusalem. Wildfires are causing chaos in Israel tonight, with the main highway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem having to be shut down. Officials say 150 firefighting teams are working to put out the fires, which have turned the skies grey over the city of Jerusalem. A dozen people have reportedly been taken to hospital. Now, on this day, 50 years ago, tanks manned by soldiers from the North Vietnamese army rolled through the gate of the presidential palace in Saigon. That was the moment that the war in Vietnam ended, bringing together a country previously divided into the communist North and the US allied South. We are going to bring you a reminder of the striking images from that war and from military parades put on today to mark the anniversary. Plus, we hear from the man who took a photograph of a young girl after an attack, a photo which became a symbol of the conflict. Have a look.
Saigon, April the 30th, 8 o'clock. The last American helicopter on the roof of the American embassy prepares to lift off the last of the evacuees fleeing before the advancing communist armies. And then, shortly after midday, came the climax of 30 years of fighting. The first North Vietnamese troops entered the city packed into trucks that flew the red and blue flag of the Communist Provisional Revolutionary Government, the PRG.
I always think about that day, many years. And after the picture, I go back again next day. Morning, still smell napalm. I still feel like picture yesterday. Always to remember that day in the village. And the victim, the little girl, she like my daughter. We talk once a week.
In a spirit of closing the past, respecting differences, aiming for the future, the whole party, the people and the army vow to make Vietnam a country of peace, unity, prosperity and development.
We'll be back in the next few minutes. We are expecting President Donald Trump to appear at this White House event, Build the Invest in America event, and he is hosting top executives from companies such as NVIDIA, Johnson & Johnson, GE Aerospace, and we are expecting defense, tech and healthcare industries to be present as well. He will be talking about the state of the economy, and he has earlier today praised tariffs in a cabinet meeting as the US economy shrinks for the first time since 2022. We'll be back in the next few minutes.
Date 1945, the day of victory in Europe.
Hostilities will end the 8th of May. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing.
80 years on from that historic moment, we will be at the heart of the events as we reflect, remember and celebrate together. Join us for the full story of VE Day on Sky News.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We'd been warned that we would meet people in the lowest moment of their lives.
Their story is one of fundamental American failure. Well, a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club, but I have to say there are more media here than there are supporters.
We love Trump!
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too. This is just the audience that Joe Biden wanted.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important, it's at the heart of the issue.
For all the talk of a toned-down, humbled Trump, yes, maybe there was just a little less rhetoric, a little less divisiveness, but in the end it was the same rhythm, the same speech, the same man.
All them people that died in Russia and Ukraine, they'd still be alive today if Donald Trump was president.
If it was my wish, have a businessman that's strong like Trump, but maybe just doesn't say as much, you know?
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What we've been allowed to see over here is a humanitarian corridor, free wherever you get your news.
A young American medical student is making remarkable things happen.
I've seen a lot of difficult things, and honestly, it breaks my heart. These children don't deserve that.
I don't think there's a single Arab I know who isn't seriously disturbed by what's going on.
And so they gathered for this wonder of nature.
I'm very excited right now.
This is an extraordinary moment beyond anything I could have expected. Sky News, get the full story first.
The Premier League run-in is live on NBC and streaming on Peacock, with crucial fixtures in the race for Europe. Saturday, Arsenal look to finish strong against Bournemouth.
Expect the unexpected.
Sunday, exclusively on Peacock, Champions League hopefuls Chelsea take on the Premier League champions Liverpool. This is the Premier League run-in, live on NBC and Peacock.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back to the programme. I'm just going to take you back to Washington now, where we are waiting to hear from President Donald Trump. He will be discussing the state of the economy. Earlier at a cabinet meeting, he praised tariffs. This comes after the US economy shrinks for the first time since 2022, and he is hosting the top executives from companies such as NVIDIA, and we can see the CEO in the front row, as well as Johnson & Johnson and GE Aerospace. And there are reports that companies from the defence, tech and healthcare industries have also been invited to attend. They've just been told to take a seat because any minute now we are expecting President Trump to arrive and make that statement. I'm just going to bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins. And David, I may have to interrupt you as soon as we do see Donald Trump, but they've got quite a display there, don't they, with some Amazon boxes covered with Invest in America stickers. I mean, Donald Trump really does know how to put on a show.
Yes, Yalda, gauging by those parcels and various other items strategically placed behind the podium, I think we can safely speculate he's going to tell us again that his administration has attracted a record $8 trillion. That's the claim, at least, since he returned to the White House. But of course, all of that is a deflection from the concern that is still being expressed by so many economists in relation to his tariffs policy. It was the Liberation Day policy that has caused most global shock, really. Just think about the figures. $2.5 trillion knocked off the stock market in an instant. The IMF downgraded the global growth forecast by 0.5%. And today, the US economy, we're hearing, has shrunk by 0.3% in the first quarter. All of those figures are going in one direction, and the polls are going in the same direction. And it doesn't really matter how they spin this, whether they blame Biden or blame us, the people they like to call the fake news media. The public aren't buying this, and the pressure isn't going to come from members of the cabinet seated around a table approving of Donald Trump's policies. The pressure is going to come from Republican members of Congress in due course.
Yeah, absolutely. David, thank you so much for bringing us up to date. We're going to leave you with these images, and I understand Donald Trump is going to enter the room any minute now.